recanted against Jean-Luc Brunel. So you defend the credibility
Let her speak or I'll cut your mic.
of your journalistic collaborator. Go ahead.
Who do you work for, Michael? Because I've never met anyone in my entire life who would who's paying you? Who do you work for? I think a lot of people are wondering this because I've never seen anyone quite like you going after victims of sex crimes and attacking them like this. So you must be being paid by someone in power who does not like these accusations.
I'm having trouble hearing right now. I wish I could respond to whatever nonsense she just blurted out.
I'm asking you if you have ever been paid by any of the men who have been accused of crime.
Maybe somebody can
astonishing coincidence that you suddenly lost your hearing when you were asked a very difficult question.
I so much love it when these MAGA bootlicking paedophile defenders get a taste of their own medicine. Honestly, there's something deeply satisfying about watching someone who spent their entire career deflecting, spinning, and outright lying get absolutely dismantled on live television. And that's precisely what we're about to witness today. Right, so, look, the Epstein case. We all know this is one of the most disturbing, far-reaching scandals of our lifetime. We're talking about a man who allegedly ran a vast network of abuse, trafficking, exploitation, and the people who enabled him, who protected him, who looked the other way. This isn't some partisan talking point. This is about children. This is about victims. And yet there are still individuals out there, prominent figures, mind you, who seem more interested in protecting certain powerful names than they are in pursuing justice. And that's what makes this particular panel discussion so bloody important. Because what we're going to see is this pattern we've observed time and time again. The deflection, the whataboutism, the desperate attempt to muddy the waters whenever accountability starts creeping too close to their side of the aisle. It's exhausting, frankly, but it's also necessary to expose. Now, I haven't watched this full panel yet. We're going to experience this together, you and I. But I already know the playbook these defenders use. I've seen it 1,000 times. Minimize the accusations, attack the victim's credibility, redirect to anyone else, anything but address the actual substance of what's being alleged. And here's what gets me let me save that thought. Let's watch this unfold first because I have a strong feeling this is going to be something special. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, have you noticed this pattern too? The way certain figures suddenly lose their appetite for law and order when it's their mates in the crosshairs. Drop your thoughts below because I genuinely want to know I'm not losing my mind here. If you love watching me unravel disasters like this, please click that subscribe button.
Well, welcome to all of you. Tara, we've spoken a lot throughout this scandal. I've noted today that the Trump administration is now saying, that's it. We've had all the files we're going to get, even though it's believed there are 3 million more that have not been put into the public domain. And there's still no real accountability of the highest profile people named in these files. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, issued a lengthy number of names, some of which, obviously, from looking at it, are completely innocent of any criminal behavior. But of all these high profile names that have been named, there's only one person who is languishing in prison, and that's Ghislaine Maxwell. This seems deeply unsatisfactory on so many levels.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that, especially considering the FBI had presentations that they were putting together, which showed that they had credible tips about a variety of other men, and they never went through with those investigations. And I think a lot of people just feel like that, if you read these emails, if you look through the FBI's own investigations, that they could have gone further and they could have actually prosecuted some of these men who have been accused by women in civil cases of rape, and through Jeffrey Epstein, through I guess like Leon Black, for example. I mean, he denies the charges that are against him, and the cases were dropped, but there are other examples as well inside of the files. And just nothing has happened. It's been, I think, not just for the victims, but for everyone, a feeling that this is it. I mean, Pam Bondi just said on Sunday, case closed.
Yeah, which it clearly isn't. And the problem with that is, if you said from the start of this, as the Republicans have, we're going to be completely transparent, and then you're self-evidently not being completely transparent. You can't hold back 3 million files and say that's all you're getting. right? The conspiracy theories will continue to rage, and I suspect there will be a series of leaks from the files that we haven't seen. So the scandal just continues. Whereas I've always felt if they just went, here you go, redacting victims' information that could lead to their identification, but just put everything out there in one hit and say, that's it, that genuinely is it, you can at least have the claim that you've been transparent.
Right. And even from the fact that a number of members of Congress, like Thomas Massey, Ro Khanna, they've gone into classified briefing rooms to see the files and what was redacted. And what they found is that, in fact, they were redacting the name of men. They weren't redacting the names of the victims. And, you know, in a number of instances, these were just men that had some connections to President Trump, some didn't. But there was no reason to redact the word less in front of Wexner, for example. There was no reason to redact the name of a Emirati businessman in the email about the torture video that he enjoyed. And so there's just a number of these examples, and we can only be left to wonder, well, what else? Especially since we know there are 3 million more files that we're probably never going to see, and we don't know why.
Right. Michael Tracy, you've been, a relatively lone voice out there arguing a lot of the public debate about this, especially around hidden elite networks, intelligence links, and so on, is mythologized beyond the evidence that we've seen from courts, documents, official records, and so on. This is not a popular view, but there are some who share it. Why do you feel so convinced of your position on this?
Because the central tenets of what I've taken to calling the Epstein mythology have simply never been supported by anything close to the degree of credible evidence that would justify the United States, Great Britain, and the world now being embroiled in this gigantic pedophilia crisis where people like Tara Palmieri and your next guest, David Boies, are convincing untold millions that there was some enormous child rape atrocity that was perpetrated and covered up at the highest levels of government. This is crazy-making stuff. And in fact, it wouldn't be surprising if people who come to believe this stuff and might already have a disposition toward mental illness could enter into a kind of homicidal mania.
Right, so hold on. Let me just process what I've just watched here. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, apparently just said case closed on Sunday. Case closed? 3 million files we haven't seen, and she's standing there telling us case closed? And wait, did you catch that? Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna, they actually went into the classified briefings. They saw what was redacted. And what did they find? They weren't redacting victims' names to protect survivors. No. They were redacting the names of men. Men with connections to power. Men who apparently need protecting more than the actual victims of this whole nightmare. I mean, the audacity, the sheer brass neck of it all. You promised transparency. That was the whole thing, wasn't it? We're going to release everything. We're going to be the party of truth. And now that's all you're getting. And then, this Michael Tracy fellow comes on and starts calling it mythology. Mythology? He's sitting there essentially saying journalists investigating credible accusations are somehow the problem here. The victims are making it up. The FBI presentations showing credible tips about powerful men. Just ignore that, apparently. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. The deflection, the blame shifting. Rather than actually addressing why certain names got special treatment with those redactions, we're supposed to believe the real scandal is journalism. Let's see what else this man has to say.
And so Tara Palmieri, I would agree with her in that there is a lot more to investigate on this subject, namely the journalistic malfeasance that's been so shockingly rampant, it's incredible. Tara Palmieri journalistically collaborated with Virginia Roberts Giuffre, didn't just use her as a source or as an inspiration, but essentially shared a byline effectively with her on the podcast series that she produced in 2020. They went around the United States saying they were just innocently on this truth-seeking mission to find out all that Jeffrey Epstein did to all his innocent victims. And they told the listeners, don't worry, none of this is about bringing any further lawsuits or criminal charges against anybody. So all these men we're trying to track down, they have no reason not to speak to us. Meanwhile, about a year or two later, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who, by the way, is one of the most egregious serial fabulists who's ever walked the earth. I know that's really controversial, but all the claims that she had to retract, the trail of destruction she left in her wake, empowered by people like David Boies and Bradley Edwards, who, by the way, if you want to know what the impediment is to full disclosure of the Epstein files, just look at what David Boies' colleague, Bradley Edwards, has been frantically arguing for the past several months in federal courts in the Southern District of New York about the supposed terror and nightmares that have been unleashed if we have the Epstein files released. On the one hand, they're all sloganeering about release the Epstein files. On the other hand, they don't just want to redact the, quote, victims' names. And by the way, what happened to saying alleged victim or purported victim? Virtually none of these people have actually ever been adjudicated as victims. The only criteria that's required by the DOJ to abide by what the frantic victim lawyers are demanding is mere self-identification of victimhood. Does the media make any of this clear? And does the media ever specify that when Pam Bondi is protested, last point, Piers, when Pam Bondi is being protested last week and everybody's going wild saying, oh, all these benighted Epstein victims are standing up and demanding truth and justice, how come it's never pointed out that the vast majority of the people who are visible there, the victims, were adults at the time of their claimed victimization? And yet this is supposed to be some massive pedophile crisis so David Boies can add to his extortion of the British royal family and now extort J.P. Morgan for another couple $100 million.
When you say
Right. I'm sorry, did he just call Virginia Giuffre one of the most egregious serial fabulists who's ever walked the earth? Hold on. I need a moment here because the audacity, the sheer unfiltered audacity of sitting on national television and dismissing dozens of victims, corroborated testimonies, police reports, photographs, emails, and calling it mythology. And thank goodness David Boies is there to absolutely demolish this nonsense, because he's right, this isn't a close call. This isn't some murky, legal grey area where reasonable people disagree. We have mountains of evidence. We have victims who've testified under oath. We have settlements, and not small ones either. We're talking millions of pounds paid by people who supposedly did nothing wrong. And here's what gets me. This bloke is sat there, concern trolling about adjudicated victims and self-identification, as if the legal system hasn't systematically failed these women at every turn, as if the FBI didn't have credible tips they never pursued, as if wealthy, connected men haven't been using their resources to suppress this information for years. The cheek of framing victim advocates as the problem while simultaneously defending the very power structures that enabled this abuse. It's genuinely breathtaking. And notice how quickly he pivots to attacking journalists rather than addressing the substance. Classic deflection. This is precisely how accountability dies, wrapped in pseudo-intellectual contrarianism, designed to muddy waters that are crystal clear.
In relation, look, I'm going to go to Tara to respond to that. It's only fair given your name checked.
I don't even know.
So aggressively. All I would say, and I'll come to the other two panelists in a moment, all I would say about so-called extortion of the British royal family, the reality is that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, when he was still Prince Andrew, said he'd never met Virginia Giuffre, certainly never had sex with her on the 3 occasions in different places he was accused to do so. He said the picture of them was fabricated, etc., etc., etc. He also, in a lengthy interview for the BBC, said he never had anything more to do with Epstein after seeing him in Central Park, after his conviction, and so on. All of which turned out to be a load of baloney. At the last minute, rather than have his day in court to clear his name, Andrew paid a cheque reported to be £12 million to Virginia Giuffre, a woman he claimed he'd never met. The picture, we now know from leaked emails by Ghislaine Maxwell in the latest dump of Epstein files, where she said were genuine. That picture was taken, right? And so I'm afraid just on that point alone, I see little extortion and just a bunch of lies from Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to cover his ass. Listening to this, actually,
Piers,
is Virginia Giuffre's. Well, hang on. I gave you a chance to speak and I've responded. We've got a better person to respond, actually, because I'm now joined by David Boies. David, great to have you back on Uncensored. It's been 6 months since I last spoke to you. So much has happened since then.
Right.
In relation to what we've just heard from another panel member, which is that Virginia Giuffre was one of the least reliable witnesses imaginable, what is your response to that?
Look, you can always find somebody to deny anything. The evidence is just overwhelming. The idea that anybody can, with a straight face, deny that this was a massive sex trafficking scheme, is between absurd and pathetic. We have the testimony of dozens, many dozens of young women, girls. We have the reports of the police department in Palm Beach. We have photographs, not just the one photograph, but multiple photographs are coming out. We have the emails that set forth at least some of the efforts, including the efforts to bribe witnesses. This is not a close call. And the reason that nobody wants to go to court and that people settle has nothing to do with extortion. It has to do with they don't have a case. If somebody has a case, they can stand up and defend themselves. This is a situation in which all of the evidence is on one side. I'm in a lot of cases that are close cases. One side has a point of view, another side has a point of view. There's evidence on both sides. And you have to make close calls. This is not one of them.
David, in relation to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, now saying that's it, we've had all the Epstein files that is going to be put in the public domain, notwithstanding the fact we've been told there are 3 million more files which will never see the light of day in terms of being put in front of the public. What is your response to that? Does that in any way constitute full transparency on these files?
Well, it's clearly not full transparency. We haven't begun to have full transparency. We have more transparency, thanks really to Congress. We have more transparency than we've had before. And I think you see in the documents that are now being revealed why people fought so hard, powerful people, rich people, politically connected people, powerful people in business, in politics, fought so hard to keep this evidence secret.
Right, so David Boyes just laid it out plain as day, didn't he? Between 10 and 20 people, men and women, he's now clarifying, who warrants serious prosecutorial investigation. And what's happened? Absolutely nothing. Case closed, according to Pam Bondi. Case closed. And here's what gets me. Congress actually passed bipartisan legislation requiring transparency. Bipartisan. That means even people across the aisle agreed this matters. And yet the Justice Department is just ignoring it, selectively complying. Pick your euphemism. David Boyes, and look, this is a man who's been in courtrooms his entire career, represented some of the biggest cases in American legal history. He's sitting there saying the evidence is overwhelming. Dozens of witnesses, police reports, photographs, emails documenting bribery attempts. This isn't speculation. This is documented reality. And what did he say about Andrew? That he should absolutely come to the United States and testify. That they'd even give him safe passage. The man's offering immunity from arrest just to get him talking. And still, nothing. Why? Because powerful people don't face consequences the way the rest of us do. But here's the bit that genuinely gives me hope. Boyes saying he's confident this isn't the end, that Congress and the courts will step in, because someone has to, don't they? When you've got 3 million files sitting in the dark and an Attorney General saying, that's enough, someone has to push back, stay critical, stay engaged, this isn't over.
There's more evidence there. We know there's more evidence there. They're admitting there's more evidence there. Some of the documents that they have produced refer to other documents that have not been produced. So we know that there's more there. And perhaps Congress, perhaps the courts have got to step in and have got to say to the Department of Justice, do your job, be transparent. Legislation, bipartisan legislation, was passed requiring the Justice Department to be transparent, to produce all these documents. Abiding by the law is part of what makes this country great. It's part of what has made the United States, and before that United States, the United Kingdom, really a beacon to the world. You can't just ignore the law. And I'm confident that this is not the end of it. I'm confident that we will continue to get to the bottom of things.
You told me 6 months ago that you'd looked into the claims of criminal wrongdoing by both President Trump and by former President Bill Clinton. You said you were quite confident neither of them had any involvement of the sex trafficking or any sexual activities. First, is that still your position from everything you've now seen from the files that have been put out?
I've not seen anything that would cause me to change my mind on that. I think that both former President Clinton and President Trump would say that they regret their association with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. I think that there were certainly aspects of poor judgment involved. And I think it was a reflection of how tolerant we were of the abuse of young women and girls that very high-placed people would work with, socialize with somebody like Jeffrey Epstein. But I don't see any evidence that either one of them participated in any of the sex trafficking, or actually prior to the time that they stopped dealing with him, really were aware of the sex trafficking.
The other thing you said to me, that you felt there were between 10 and 20 men who you felt the government had enough information, evidence on, that would justify at least a serious prosecutorial investigation, and that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the former Prince Andrew, was one of these men and was given a pass. Is that still, again, your position?
Yes, I mean, I think I might amend it. I probably should have amended it 6 months ago, but 20 men and women. I don't think it's just limited to men, unfortunately.
So there were women also perpetrating crimes?
Yes. And certainly engage in activity that is worth investigating. I don't want to try to make a judgment without looking at all the evidence about whether anybody actually committed a crime. But a lot of people acted very wrongfully, improperly, and there's enough evidence of criminality to warrant an investigation.
Should Andrew Mountbatten Windsor now come to the United States and face the music under oath in front of Congress, in your opinion?
Absolutely. I think he's got an obligation to tell what he knows. Now, I also think that if he's afraid of being arrested in the United States, we ought to give him safe passage to come to the United States to testify. Because I think we don't want there to be any excuse for him not coming and telling what he knows. But he knows a lot. How much, I don't know myself, because they gave up in the litigation we had against them just before his deposition was supposed to be taken. So I don't think anybody knows how much he knows. But we know he knows a lot from his contact. And whatever he knows, even if it was a little bit, I think he has an obligation to share that.
Right, so David Boyes there, absolutely laying it out. And look, I appreciate him being measured, being careful with his words, because that's what proper legal professionals do. They don't throw accusations around without evidence. But what he's saying is crystal clear. There are people, powerful people, who should be facing serious questions right now. And they're not. And this bit about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor needing to come to the United States and testify. Absolutely. The man paid reportedly £12 million to make a lawsuit disappear. A lawsuit brought by someone he claimed he'd never met. That's not the behaviour of an innocent person, is it? That's the behaviour of someone who knew exactly what would come out under oath. But here's what gets me. David Boyes just said there are potentially 20 men and women who warrant investigation. 20. And we're being told case closed. We're being told 3 million files are just off limits. The media complicity here is staggering. How many outlets are actually pushing on this? How many are demanding answers? Because when powerful people can simply write checks to make accusations vanish, when governments can declare transparency whilst hiding millions of documents, that's not justice. That's protection. And the victims, the actual victims, They're watching this play out. They're watching people debate whether their experiences even happened. The suppression of these files isn't about protecting the innocent. It's about protecting the powerful. Full stop. All right, let's see what's next.
Michael Tracy, was there anything David Boyce said giving you pause for thought?
I have to say, Piers, I'm a bit disappointed that you didn't ask him a single challenging question. I invite you to ask me any challenging question you'd like, and you'd think that given David Boyce's stature and him being hailed as this legendary criminal attorney, that maybe he could tolerate one or two probing questions that might be outstanding, such as amongst these files that have been produced as of January 30th are a memo that memorializes internal deliberations amongst prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, in which they frankly convey that they are stunned as to how outlandishly non-credible Virginia Roberts Giuffre was when they interviewed her in September 2019. This memo is December 2019. David Boyce represented Virginia, including as to the lawsuit that was brought against Prince Andrew. And yes, it was an extortionist lawsuit, but the British royal family is incredibly feckless. They are not going to challenge any of the premises that are being marshaled against him to foment this mass hysteria and moral panic. And therefore, everybody takes the resolution of that lawsuit to mean that there was some concession to Prince Andrew's guilt. Even if we want to stipulate that he did have some sort of sexual contact with Virginia Roberts Giuffre when it was alleged to have taken place, she would have been above the legal age of consent in England, and yet we're told this is a giant pedophilic sex trafficking crisis. But you know what the files show us? That the government investigators who were on a warpath at this point against Epstein and then Maxwell discovered no credible evidence of any pedophilic sex trafficking or any sex trafficking at all to any third-party individuals, which was the crux of the mythology that Virginia Roberts Giuffre incubated, that Tara Palmieri amplified so lamentably credulously, and that David Boyce actualized in the legal filings that he carried out on her behalf. This is outrageous.
All right.
This is a fraud that's been perpetrated on the public by a conspiracy. You know what the conspiracy is? The conspiracy is this unthinking, brainless hysteria combined with journalistic credulity, combined with an unwillingness to do any actual research as to the facts and evidence, and to treat David Boyce like you just did. Now, why didn't you ask him about the 30% in attorney's fees that he convinced Judge Rakoff in the Southern District of New York to reward him for his almost $350+ million lawsuits against Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan that he's now trying to extract even more from Bank of America, which is why he's trying to prevent the disclosure of Epstein files, because he doesn't want to undercut his case.
Do you know what? I'm hearing it.
Can I ask a question?
I'm hearing some.
Oh, wow. Okay, right. So let me just process what I've witnessed here. This man, Michael Tracy, just sat there and accused everyone else of conspiracy theories while simultaneously weaving the most elaborate web of deflection I think I've ever seen on live television. The audacity, the sheer brass neck of it all. And did you catch that? Did you catch the moment Tara asked him directly, who's paying you? And suddenly, his audio cuts out. What a remarkable coincidence. What extraordinary timing. I'm not saying anything untoward happened, but come on, we're not daft, are we? Here's what I need you to understand about this denial playbook, right? It's textbook. Absolutely textbook. Attack the credibility of victims. Question the journalists. Muddy the waters with legalese and procedural complaints. And when someone asks you a direct question about your motives, technical difficulties. Every single time. We've seen this pattern before, haven't we? With every scandal involving powerful men. The same tactics, the same diversionary nonsense, the same attempts to make you feel like you're the crazy one for believing documented evidence. But here's what they can't account for. Public pressure works. It worked with the initial Epstein arrest. It worked with Maxwell's conviction. And it'll work again when enough people demand those 3 million files. They want you confused. They want you exhausted. Don't give them that satisfaction. Right, let's keep going.
I'm hearing a lot of conspiracy theories, but they're all coming out of your mouth. Let me give the final word to Tara, because he
what
keeps...
conspiracy theory did I postulate?
He keeps when he's not lecturing. when he's not lecturing me about my interview skills, he's lecturing you about your journalistic skills. So your response to that and to what David Boies had to say.
Please, Tara, go ahead, defend it.
I don't know, Michael. Have you ever actually listened to any of the tapes at the Palm Beach, the police in Palm Beach, the detective? Have you listened to any of the girls that they interviewed that were as young as 14?
I've listened to them all.
Yeah, and you think that they're not
listened
credible?
to it all, Tara.
You don't think that entire pyramid scheme in a high school?
Do you think Virginia Roberts-Giuffre is credible? She had nothing to do with that initial Palm Beach investigation. We're talking about your former journalistic collaborator who had to recant allegations against Dershowitz, had to recant her allegations against
let her speak, please.
Harvard professor, Stephen Koslin, recanted against Jean-Luc Brunel. So you defend the credibility
let her speak or I'll cut your mic.
of your journalistic collaborator. Go ahead.
Who do you work for, Michael? Because I've never met anyone in my entire life who would who's paying you? Who do you work for? I think a lot of people are wondering this because I've never seen anyone quite like you going after victims of sex crimes and attacking them like this. So you must be being paid by someone in power who does not like these accusations that have been made against them. And I think it's fair to ask, are you being paid by any of the men who've been accused by Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm having trouble hearing right now. I wish I could respond to whatever nonsense she just blurted out.
I'm asking you if you have ever been paid by any of the men who have been accused of crimes.
Maybe somebody can
an astonishing coincidence that you suddenly lost your hearing when you were asked a very difficult question, and rather telling, I may say.
I heard it.
Okay, I'm not saying you didn't get cut. I'm just saying.
If he can hear you, can you ask him that question? Because he can't hear me, but maybe he can hear you asking that question.
Oh, this is beautiful. This is absolutely beautiful. Did you see that? Did you see what just happened? The moment Tara asks him a direct question about who's paying him, suddenly his audio cuts out. Suddenly he can't hear anything. What a remarkable coincidence that. And look, I'm not saying, actually no, I am saying it's suspicious. Because here's the thing, this bloke has spent the entire segment attacking victims, attacking journalists, calling documented abuse a mythology, and the second someone turns the spotlight back on him, the technology conveniently fails. Convenient, very convenient indeed. But here's what gets me, here's what really gets me. He calls Tara a disgrace. Her, the journalist who's actually done the legwork, who's spoken to survivors, who's waded through these documents. Meanwhile, he's sat there spouting conspiracy theories while simultaneously accusing everyone else of spreading conspiracy theories. The cognitive dissonance it's staggering, frankly. And notice how he never actually answered the question. Not once. Just pivoted straight to personal attacks. That's the playbook, isn't it? When you can't defend your position on the merits, you go after the messenger. This is precisely what accountability looks like when powerful interests feel threatened. Attack the journalists, discredit the victims, muddy the waters until nobody knows what to believe anymore. Right, let's see how this wraps up.
Yeah,
I think it's a fair
Michael, can you
question to
hear
ask.
me?
Did you
Can
just?
you hear
I
me,
can
Michael?
hear you very faintly. Did you just allege that I'm somehow implicated in the Epstein criminality, or did I mishear you?
I asked you if you were being
Tara
paid
asked
by
if you're
anyone.
Tara asked if you're being paid by anybody to smear the victims of the Epstein
rather than
scandal.
defend the merits of her journalistic output, which she can't because it's indefensible, what does she do? She tries to impugn me personally, tries to imply or
You're not
allege
answering
What's the answer to the question?
motive. Of course I'm not being
What's the
paid by
answer?
anyone. I am paid by my
It's a yes or
readers
no
on
question.
Substack, you idiot. You just can't engage on the merits, Tara. You are a disgrace.
I mean,
you
I'm
are
happy
going
to go
be
through all of my
remembered as
reporting,
somebody
which
who was
was
integral
fact-checked.
in fomenting this moral panic and mass hysteria that's led to mass defamation like you just tried against me. You know how Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey got caught a few days ago accusing a random auto mechanic in New York and a random IT manager of having been complicit in pedophilic sex crimes? You're just following on in that tradition, which is so emblematic of how this issue has functioned in the popular mind.
I'm going to give
now
Tara.
it's being weaponized politically.
Tara, let me just.
Of course, Piers.
Tara,
I resent the implication.
no.
I resent the question. I asked her straightforward questions about her own journalistic
Yeah,
work.
okay,
She
I'm
hasn't
going to
addressed
Tara
a
now.
Single aspect of it.
You don't just get to
Instead, she
talk
tries
ad
to do her
infinitum.
whole little defamation song and dance because She can't actually engage in an intelligent way because there's no defense to what
Tara,
she's done.
No, there is.
Nor for David.
Tara,
I
let me
can
ask-
talk about
Tara-
I can talk about my reporting on the Broken Jeffrey Epstein
Tara, let me
podcast.
ask you. Tara, you don't need to justify your reporting. It's been excellent on the whole scandal.
Why not?
Tara, let me just ask you.
I'll justify
what was your?
mine.
Let me ask Tara. What was your response to David Boyes' interview? Finally,
And there it is. There it is. That's how it ends. With him conveniently losing his audio the moment he's asked who's paying him. Remarkable timing, that. Absolutely remarkable. Look, I've just watched this entire panel unfold, and I need you to understand something. What you witnessed wasn't journalism. What you witnessed wasn't debate. What you witnessed was a masterclass in deflection, obfuscation, and, frankly, victim dismissal dressed up as skepticism. And here's what gets me. We've got 3 million files still hidden. 3 million. Pam Bondi says case closed. Meanwhile, Congress members are going into classified rooms and finding redactions protecting men, not victims. Men. And we're supposed to just accept that? The audacity of sitting there calling documented survivors serial fabulists, questioning their credibility while simultaneously refusing to answer basic questions about your own motivations. It's breathtaking, really. It's absolutely breathtaking. David Boyes laid it out plainly. There's overwhelming evidence. Dozens of testimonies, photographs, emails detailing bribery attempts. This isn't ambiguous. This isn't murky. And yet certain voices want you confused. They want you exhausted. They want you to throw your hands up and say, I don't know what to believe anymore. Don't. Don't give them that. Stay critical. Demand transparency. And for God's sake, keep asking who benefits when victims are silenced and files stay buried. Thank you for watching this with me. Genuinely. Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear them. Like, subscribe, share this about. We'll keep doing this together. Right. Until next time.